What is up, YouTube? I am your host, Ranee B, and here to spill that homicidal tea. And today we are spilling tea because, okay, we need to chat. What do you guys think about purely circumstantial cases? I'm one of those people that just looks guilty. Like, if there's something wrong and it involves stapler, then you can bet that my ass is holding a stapler going, what? Computer or printer gets unplugged, I'm definitely standing by the outlet. Like, I, for some reason, am always in a position where I gotta say, no, 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 it's not what you think. Well, this is one of those cases, like, where you think, is she guilty? Hell yeah. Well, wait, is she though? This is the case of Timothy Wiltsey. On May 25th, 1991, Michelle Lodzinski called police and stated that she and her son, Timothy Wiltsey, had been at a local carnival in Sayreville, New Jersey. And that she had been distracted and then turned back around to look for him and he was gone. Law enforcement swarmed the carnival, basically shutting it down, looking for the 5-year-old. The first few hours of not knowing where Timothy was turned into days. Then a week after Timothy disappeared, Michelle did about the worst thing that someone in the middle of a police investigation can do. She changed her story. She was now saying that 2 men had taken Timothy at knife point, intimidating her and just not saying anything. Okay, and I'm sure the investigators were like, fine, we'll look into that and these new facts and then we'll and I'm sure the police were like, okay, yeah, we'll look into these facts and we'll circle around back tomorrow. Oh, wait, no. The next day, she went back to the cops again and told authorities a different story. This time, the perpetrators were 2 men and a woman. The woman was allegedly known as Ellen, and she was a go-go dancer and also a customer at the bank that Michelle had worked as a teller. Well, screw the men and screw Ellen. Michelle, you're suspect numero uno. She took a polygraph. No, 2 polygraphs. She failed them both. Disclaimer. Blah, blah. Of course, we all know that these tests are not allowed in a court of law and that they're an investigative tool only to gauge honesty, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? They are enough to be probable cause to get search warrants. So at the same time, there's a little bit of truth inside those little machines. Investigators spoke to people at the carnival and nobody remembered even seeing Timothy, who was described as wearing a bright red shirt, blue pants, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle shoes. Even those close to Michelle remembered seeing her at the carnival, but not Timothy. So all leads of Ellen petered out, and Michelle had told authorities that on the afternoon of the day that Timothy had disappeared, that she had taken him to a park. Well, the specific parking lot and that she said she parked at, the investigators looked into it, and that parking lot wasn't even open that day. Michelle, what are you doing? You're killing me. The actual last sighting of Timothy came from a neighbor in the South Amboy neighborhood who said that they saw him playing outside the morning of his disappearance. On October 26, 1991, a bird watcher was at a local park and had found a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle shoe. He contacted police, as this was the same exact detail that had been splashed all over the news in an effort to locate the little boy. Well, police were encouraged, and when they showed the shoe to Michelle to hopefully establish a timeline and have a new area to focus their search on, she said it wasn't his. So that lead went cold along with all the others. So Timothy's father was also looked into as a suspect, and he was not even anywhere near the area. So back to ground zero. Authorities decided that they needed more help, so they called in the FBI. In early April of 1992, an FBI field agent went back to the area in which the shoe had been found, and it was learned that Michelle actually used to work nearby. A fact that she negated to tell them whenever she gave her employment history for some reason, but on April 23rd, 1992, a full-scale search was made in the area. Quickly, the matching shoe was discovered, and immediately after that, a partial skeleton was found and pieces of clothing that was matching the reported outfit that Timothy had been wearing that day. Also with the items was a blue blanket. Now, this blanket stuck out to investigators for some reason. They didn't know why, but they knew enough of their intuition to bag it and tag it, because who knows if you'll need it. Well, they would need it more than they would even know. You have no idea, but that's coming up later. Due to advanced decomposition, no time of death could be determined and no cause of death could be determined. So unfortunately, identification had to be confirmed through dental records, and they did determine that it was little Timothy. The case went ominously quiet for a couple years, and then on January 21st, 1994, Michelle was back in the crosshairs of investigators for other reasons. Her car was found running in her driveway of her home, but there was no signs of Michelle anywhere. She turned up the following day in Detroit from New Jersey, kind of a hike, claiming that she had been abducted by an FBI agent and that she was warned by this FBI agent that this was punishment for talking too much about Timothy's case. Sure, whatever. But 2 weeks later, Michelle's brother found a business card, an FBI agent's business card that was left on her door as well. There was a message that was written on it. It's not over. Creepy, right? Actually, no, she wasn't really that bright, and investigators contacted local business card companies, and they discovered that Michelle had visited one of them and placed an order for FBI cards to be printed. Since Michelle admitted to the fake kidnapping, she was sentenced to 6 months of house arrest and 3 years of probation. Yay! Time went on, no sign of Timmy. No leads, nothing. In 1997, Michelle was pregnant with her second child. Pregnancy must have made those fingers get sticky because she got busted for stealing a computer from her former employer. I mean, no big deal. It was just a Christmas present for her family. Okay, her decision-making skills, not that good. Well, it's not a big deal anyway. Here, honey, take some house arrest and some probation and just move along. In 1998, she hightailed it to Florida and then hopped all the way up to Minnesota in 1999. It was in Minnesota that she would actually settle down and get hitched a few years later. By 2003, pregnant with her third child, and her marriage had started disintegrating. I mean, how? She seems so stable. She tore her ass back down to Port St. Lucie, Florida again. Well, this is where she started getting settled into Florida. She got herself a little house. She got all cozy. I wonder how Timothy was doing. Yeah, he was dead. And no one even seemed to care. That was bullshit. There was a team of detectives that cared a lot. They actually had since reopened the case without anybody knowing. They had contacted a niece of Michelle's to be re-interviewed, and this niece had asked whatever happened to a blue blanket that was one of his favorites. Well, when detectives heard this, they asked her to elaborate. She said that she used to babysit for Michelle and identified a blue and white blanket found near the remains of her cousin as the one that she recognized from the visits to his home. Whenever they showed her the evidence pictures, she dissolved into tears, saying that that was the exact blanket that she used to snuggle up with Timothy with. On August 6, 2014, which is actually Timothy's 29th birthday, Michelle Lodzinski was arrested and charged with the murder of her son nearly 25 years earlier. Thankfully, the judge in the case allowed the evidence of her changing her statements over and over about what had occurred, and that established actually the circumstantial evidence that enabled the district attorney's office to go forward with the case. The judge did not allow the evidence of the kidnapping hoax, though, unfortunately, so you don't really get to get the full nut job effect from her. Michelle's trials began on March 16, 2016, and it was about this time that the public got to see what had made the district attorney so excited to take this case. It turns out at least 3 women who had babysat for Timothy back in 1991 identified that blue blanket that was found near the body as being damn near identical to the one that Michelle used to keep on her couch in her home. Authorities also had spent a lot of time focusing on that blanket, and Michelle said that she didn't even own that blanket, nor a blanket like that one. But FBI profilers and investigators alike thoroughly believed that only someone close to Timothy would have taken that blanket to cover his body. What the profilers made known was that this is often what is thought to be an act of compassion from the murderer, despite what they'd already done. It's actually compassion combined with the desire to want to use something close to the victim to comfort them in a real screwed up way. What's more is the fact that the blanket was even there. This also indicated investigators that Timothy had not been at the carnival as Michelle had claimed. That day that he disappeared, totally hot, like 90 degrees, humid as all get out. This was a heavy blanket, not a child security blanket that they could just carry around. There's no way that this blanket would have been needed. Prosecutors claim that Michelle killed Timothy because he was a burden to her and her lifestyle. They put former school administrators as well as her former employers on the stand as well. School officials testified that Timothy had attended kindergarten from September of 1990 to May of 91, and within that time period, he was late 63 days and absent 25. Additionally, two former employers of Michelle said that she was late or absent all the time and that she was never at a job anyway for more than a few months at a time. After more than 60 witnesses testified in the case, the jury heard closing arguments. They returned with a verdict on May 18, 2016, after less than 4 hours of deliberations. You guys know just as much as I do that when a jury comes back quick, dog, and they got you, you don't know. Well, that's exactly what happened. The jury found Michelle guilty of first-degree murder, and after several delays, she was sentenced to 30 years in prison without the possibility of parole on January 5th, 2017. Her lawyers, of course, said that they would appeal, and they did 2 years later. On August 7th, 2019, a 3-judge appellate panel denied Lodzinski's appeal, saying there was available proof for the jury to conclude beyond a reasonable doubt that Timmy's death was neither a suicide nor an accident, but rather he was a victim of a homicide. Thank you, goodbye, go back to your cell. But that wouldn't stop her attorneys, though. February 21st, 2020. The New Jersey Supreme Court actually agreed to hear Lodzinski's appeal, saying that it would consider defense arguments that the trial judge actually made a mistake when he refused to declare a mistrial after a juror was excused during deliberations for conducting his own research. The court also says that it wanted to look to see whether there was even sufficient enough evidence to support her conviction. Fast forward to October 27, 2020, in a hearing held remotely due to COVID, the New Jersey Supreme Court heard Lodzinski's attorneys and the Middlesex County Prosecutor's Office, who basically bickered over the evidence. They also would debate over the judge presiding over the murder and whether they'd have been wrong to refuse to declare a mistrial and all that. But a state's appellate court upheld the verdict, agreeing that there was, as I said earlier, not available proof for the jury to conclude beyond a reasonable doubt that Timothy's death was neither a homicide or an accident, rather than be a victim of a homicide. That's just part of the statute. You're in it or you're out of it. So looks like that it fell into those circumstances. Sorry, back to yourself. But you know these attorneys don't stop though. In May of 2021, the state Supreme Court, which had surprised a lot of people by deciding to actually hear this case again, found itself split. 3 justices concluded that the evidence presented at trial was more than sufficient to support a reasonable jury's determination that Lodzinski was guilty of purposely or knowingly killing her son. They said that the state was permitted to rely entirely on circumstantial evidence, but there were other members of the court that called the verdict a miscarriage of justice, and based on a total lack of evidence, labeling her conviction as a failure of the checks and balances of the criminal justice system at all levels. Deadlocked. 3 versus 3. Well, there was a 7th judge. His name was Chief Justice Stuart Rabner. He'd actually recused himself from the case without any explanation, just saying, dude, I'm out of here. Anyway, this resulted in a 3-3 split, and that means that the earlier appellate court ruling that denied her appeal remained intact. Lodzinski's attorneys actually said that the split decision denied her of her right to due process, arguing that the court's affirmance was, by default, was left in place by an appellate ruling that had been made under an unconstitutional standard. They immediately called for an appointment of a senior appellate division judge to serve as the 7th deciding voice. It doesn't work like that. The district attorney's office labeled the defense motion for reconsideration a product of dissatisfaction with the court's decision and urged it to be denied. From early on, they knew that the appellate judge was not going to be taking part in it, that this Chief Justice Rabner would not participate in the decision. Yet, Lodzinski's lawyers never moved to have a 7th justice appointed. They could have that entire time, but they never did. They were fully cognizant that the court could render an evenly split decision, which would result in a decision affirming the appellate division ruling. Her lawyers dropped the ball on this. And it was found that the court was well aware of its ability to appoint a temporary justice long before arguments were even held in the case, but they didn't do so. There's no requirements that 7 justices have to participate in this decision, period. So basically it's tough shit, bitch. I'm not sure how I feel about this one, though. This is definitely not a death penalty case in my book. I mean, woof. And you guys know how much I love to give those 3 injections, but no, not in this one. No way, no how. I don't even know if I'm okay with that there's enough evidence to even convict her. I mean, there's sometimes on these cold justice episodes where they get arrest warrants, and I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know. Do y'all ever feel that way? Because it seems like that they have really flimsy stories to convict, and it just sometimes makes me wonder if there's a lot of people in jail that don't need to be. I think so, but I don't know if this is one of them. Like I said, I'm really torn on this one. So what do you guys think? I mean, is anyone even familiar with this case? Do you remember this from when you were younger? I was living in Texas at the time, so I wasn't even aware of this. This never even hit our news. I still broke the joke. Oh, this stuff is so expensive to buy to make it sound decent, but it's much better than that echo that I used to be. So I ask you also to subscribe so we can help grow the channel. That's it for now, and I will see you very soon in the next video. Bye!